Wait! I must have the password.
Oh, well, if you must have it, that's wonderful. I'm glad you have that. You said you have the password. That's...
Yeah, but how do I know you have the password?
What if I told you that one of America's most beloved comedians wrote a will so cruel that it destroyed his entire family? Jerry Lewis, the man who made millions of people laugh, left behind a document that was designed to cause nothing but pain. When he died in 2017, his 6 sons discovered they had been completely cut out of his $50 million fortune. But that's not even the worst part. There's a 7th child nobody talks about, a woman with DNA proof that Jerry was her father. She could have claimed millions, but she was too poor to hire a lawyer. Tonight, we're diving deep into the dark family secrets that led to Hollywood's most vengeful will. Jerry Lewis wasn't always Jerry Lewis. He was born Jerome LeVage in Newark, New Jersey in 1926. His parents were struggling performers, trying to make it during the Great Depression. His father did vaudeville acts, while his mother played piano at radio stations. Money was always tight. Sometimes little Jerry slept backstage at theaters. Sometimes he didn't sleep at all. When Jerry was just 6 years old, something happened. That would change his life forever. He was performing on stage, singing a sad song called "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime?" But then he accidentally stepped on a stage light. It exploded with a loud bang that shook the entire room. Jerry froze, thinking he had ruined everything. But instead of being angry, the audience started laughing and clapping. In that moment, Jerry learned something powerful. Even scary accidents could be funny if you handled them the right way. By the time he was 8, Jerry was back on stage regularly. By 16, he had dropped out of school completely. His last day at school wasn't peaceful either. A teacher made a horrible comment about Jewish people, and Jerry punched him so hard that the man went through a plate glass window. The principal survived, but he died a year later from stomach cancer. Jerry carried guilt about this for decades, wondering if somehow he had caused it. With no education to fall back on, Jerry threw himself into performing. He created something called the Record Act, where he would play popular songs on a record player and act out the words with wild facial expressions and body movements. It was silly and awkward, but it got him noticed. He made about $3 a night, which wasn't much even back then. In 1942, when Jerry was 16, a comedian named Irving Kay saw him perform and offered to become his manager. This led Jerry to work in the Borscht Belt, a series of hotels where Jewish families went on vacation. Jerry would perform at night and then work during the day, cleaning rooms, washing towels, and serving food. The conditions were terrible, but it was the only way he could survive as a performer. Everything changed when Jerry met Patty Palmer in 1944. She was a singer working with a big orchestra. They fell in love quickly, maybe too quickly. By October, Patty was pregnant. To avoid scandal, they told everyone they had secretly gotten married in Connecticut. But this was a lie. Their real wedding didn't happen until months later in April 1945 at a fancy New York hotel. Jerry was still under 18 and needed his parents' permission to get married. Their son Gary was born in July 1945. Suddenly, Jerry was a 19-year-old father trying to support a family with his comedy act. Then came the night that changed everything. On July 25th, 1946, at a nightclub called the 500 Club in Atlantic City, Jerry Lewis met Dean Martin. Both men were struggling performers, and their individual acts weren't working that night. The club owner told them they had one last chance to impress the audience, or they would be fired. In desperation, Jerry threw away their planned routine. He dressed up like a restaurant worker and started smashing plates while Dean kept singing calmly. The contrast was hilarious. The audience loved it. Word spread quickly about this crazy new comedy team. Within weeks, famous people were coming to see them perform. They went from nearly being fired to becoming the hottest act in America. Their success led to radio shows, movies, and television appearances. For 10 years, Martin and Lewis were the most popular comedy duo in the country. But success came with a price. Behind the scenes, Jerry was becoming more and more controlling. He started making all the decisions about their performances, even telling Dean how long he could sing his songs. Dean began to feel like he was just Jerry's sidekick instead of an equal partner. Just their friendship slowly started falling apart. The end came in 1956, exactly 10 years after they had first teamed up. During their final performance at the Copacabana nightclub in New York, you could feel the tension. They were only on stage together because they had to be. After years of fighting about money, scripts, and who got more attention from audiences, their partnership was over. Dean was tired of being the straight man, while Jerry got all the big laughs. Jerry wanted to add more emotion and deeper meaning to their comedy, while Dean just wanted to get through each show. After the split, Jerry wasted no time proving he could succeed on his own. His first solo movie in 1957 made $6 million, which was huge back then, but his behavior on movie sets was becoming frightening. During one bad scene, Jerry exploded with anger and smashed an expensive camera worth over $100,000 in today's money. People who worked with him said he was a perfectionist, but also unpredictable and scary. In 1959, Jerry signed one of the most shocking contracts in Hollywood history. Paramount Pictures gave him $10 million, plus 60% of all profits for 14 movies over 7 years. He was now the highest paid performer in the entire industry and had complete creative control. The studio head even joked that if Jerry wanted to burn down the studio, he would give him the matches. But this freedom quickly turned into chaos. Jerry began writing, directing, and starring in his own movies. While some were successful, his behavior on set became brutal. He would fire crew members in front of everyone else. He screamed at people for tiny mistakes. Actors who worked with him once refused to ever work with him again. The man who once made people laugh through playfulness was now feared for his terrible temper. During this time, Jerry also introduced something new to movie making. He used a system that let him watch scenes immediately after filming them. While he didn't actually invent this technology, he took credit for it and became famous for using it. At first, it seemed helpful because directors could see exactly what they had filmed, but Jerry used it to spy on his actors. People felt uncomfortable and watched all the time, like they were trapped under a microscope held by someone who was becoming increasingly paranoid. In 1961, Jerry tried something completely different. He recorded a music album called Jerry Lewis Just Sings that shot to number 3 on the music charts. But the recording process was a nightmare. Jerry showed up drunk to the studio. He cursed during takes and went off script constantly. The engineers had to spend hours cutting out bad language and trying to save whatever they could. Musicians said the studio felt like a war zone, with Jerry yelling, throwing equipment, and demanding endless retakes. That same year, while filming The Errand Boy, Jerry did something that shocked everyone on set. Without any warning, he launched into a disturbing scene where he pretended to be Hitler, complete with angry gestures and expressions. No one knew it was coming, not even his co-writer. Since Jerry had total control under his massive contract, he could film whatever he wanted. But when studio executives saw the footage, they panicked. Test audiences were horrified. The scene wasn't funny at all. It was disturbing and completely clashed with Jerry's family-friendly image. The studio immediately cut it from the final movie. Jerry's most famous film came in 1963 with The Nutty Professor. But what fans didn't see was the physical suffering he endured to play both the nerdy professor and his smooth alter ego. Every single day, Jerry sat in a makeup chair for 4 hours, while layers of glue and fake pieces were applied to his face. He developed such severe allergic reactions that his skin broke out in painful rashes and welts. Doctors begged him to stop, but he refused to let anyone else play the part. His face swelled and his body ached, but he kept going because he was chasing perfection, no matter what it cost him physically. The most controversial moment in Jerry's career came in 1972, when he filmed The Day the Clown Cried, a Holocaust movie about a clown who led children to gas chambers. Jerry didn't just act in it. He rewrote the script and directed it too. But the reaction was horrifying. Critics were disgusted. Legal issues prevented the movie from ever being released. Jerry later said that playing that role made him physically sick. He donated a copy to the Library of Congress, but made it clear that it would never be shown to the public. He said the movie would either need to be better than Citizen Kane, or it would be the worst thing ever put on film. There was no middle ground. In 1976, something magical happened during Jerry's annual charity telethon. Frank Sinatra had secretly arranged for Dean Martin to make a surprise appearance. 20 years after their bitter split, Dean walked out on live television. Jerry looked stunned, then smiled and asked, "So, you working?" Millions of people watching cried as they witnessed this reunion. Jerry later claimed that he and Dean spoke every day after that, but they never performed together again. It was one moment of healing in a sea of pain that had lasted 2 decades. Throughout all of this success and controversy, Jerry was fighting a private battle with addiction. In 1965, he had suffered a terrible fall from a piano at a Las Vegas hotel that shattered his back. The constant pain led him to become dependent on powerful painkillers called Percodan. For 13 long years, from 1965 to 1978, Jerry was hooked on these pills, sometimes taking as many as 13 a day. The addiction nearly killed him. In October 1978, he began bleeding from his nose, mouth, and ears because of severe stomach ulcers caused by years of drug use. A famous doctor hospitalized him and forced him to quit cold turkey. When Jerry got home from the hospital, he flushed 2,000 Percodan tablets down the toilet and swore off painkillers forever. But his back pain never left him, and he lived with that constant suffering for the rest of his life. Jerry's finances weren't much better during this period. In the 1970s and 1980s, he poured money into failed business ventures, including a chain of movie theaters that never even opened. With his films flopping and his money disappearing, Jerry found himself in serious financial trouble. He later admitted that during this dark time, he considered ending his own life. Things got even worse in the early 1990s when doctors prescribed him massive doses of a drug called prednisone to treat lung disease. The side effects of this medication triggered waves of deep depression that made his mental state even more fragile. But then, in 1993, Jerry managed to sell the remake rights to The Nutty Professor to Universal Studios for $1.4 million and secured a share of future profits. This deal literally pulled him back from the edge of financial ruin. But it wasn't just Jerry's body and bank account that suffered. His own family was falling apart too. His son Anthony, born in 1959, described their house as a place filled with fear. Whenever Jerry's car pulled into their driveway, their mother would announce his arrival over the intercom system, and all the children would scatter to their rooms. Anthony said that Jerry beat them with a belt, but that the emotional wounds were far worse than the physical ones. The children never knew what kind of man would walk through the front door each day. Would it be the world-famous comedian that millions loved? Or would it be an unpredictable tyrant who might explode at any moment? The darkest chapter in the Lewis family story came in 2009, when Jerry's youngest son Joseph died alone in Utah at just 45 years old. The cause was a morphine overdose. Joseph had been homeless for years, moving between shelters and eating at soup kitchens. Jerry had disowned him back in 1989 after Joseph told a tabloid newspaper that his father was abusive. Jerry never forgave his son for speaking publicly about their family problems. When Joseph died, Jerry didn't even pay for the funeral. Years later, Jerry admitted he felt some guilt about Joseph's death, but maintained his distance from the situation. According to Joseph's ex-wife, Jerry told his other sons to stay completely silent about their brother's death. That same year, Anthony sued Jerry on behalf of their mother, Patty Palmer. After Jerry and Patty's divorce in 1980, she had been struggling financially, and Anthony felt he had no choice but to take legal action. The lawsuit brought out disturbing court documents showing that Jerry had called his sons mistakes. This public betrayal shattered what little relationship was left between Jerry and Anthony. Jerry cut off all communication with Anthony, who would later be completely written out of his father's will. Meanwhile, in 1992, Jerry and his second wife Sandy adopted a baby girl named Danielle. She was raised as Jerry's only child, while his 6 sons from his first marriage were pushed further and further out of his life. Some people close to the family believe that Jerry used Danielle as a way to erase his past and send a clear message to the sons he had cast aside. Danielle herself has always denied being abused and has defended Jerry publicly. When Jerry Lewis died on August 20th, 2017, at the age of 91, the final devastating blow came quickly. His will, which had been written in 2012, gave his entire $50 million fortune to his second wife Sandy and their adopted daughter Danielle. His 6 biological sons were left with absolutely nothing. But the language in the will was what made it truly cruel. Jerry had named each son individually, along with their children, and made it crystal clear that they were to receive nothing from his estate. His lawyers had crafted the document to be completely unbreakable. The will even included something called a no contest clause, which threatened that anyone who tried to challenge the will would lose everything, though there was nothing left for the sons to lose anyway. Most people expected Jerry's sons to fight the will in court, but surprisingly, not one of them filed a single lawsuit. Anthony said he wasn't shocked by his father's cruelty, because he had been expecting it for years. He felt more pain knowing that his own children, Jerry's grandchildren, would also be left out completely. Gary Lewis, Jerry's eldest and most successful son who had his own music career, also stayed quiet. Some family members said the sons were simply too emotionally exhausted after decades of trauma to keep fighting their father, even after his death. But there was one more shocking twist to this story. In 2009, a woman named Susan Minaret had come forward claiming to be Jerry's daughter from an affair he had in 1952. DNA tests showed an 88.7% match between Susan and Gary Lewis, which essentially confirmed that she was indeed Jerry's biological daughter. This made her what lawyers call a pretermitted heir, meaning someone who was unintentionally left out of a will and who might have legal grounds to claim part of the estate. Susan could have sued for a significant share of Jerry's $50 million fortune. But there was a heartbreaking problem. Susan lived in poverty, working in homeless shelters, and couldn't afford the $200,000 in legal fees that would be needed to fight the case in court. Despite the overwhelming genetic evidence proving Jerry was her father, he had always denied even knowing her mother. Susan never received a single penny from her biological father's massive estate. By 2018, Jerry's estate was quietly settled with no courtroom drama. Sandy Pitnick received everything, just as Jerry had planned. There were no major lawsuits and no public showdowns. But legal investigators discovered some disturbing evidence that Jerry had been moving money around long before his death. Properties had been transferred into Sandy's name between 2010 and 2015. There were also suspicions about offshore bank accounts that might have hidden even more assets. Legal experts said this looked less like normal estate planning and more like a calculated punishment. Jerry hadn't just disinherited his sons. He had tried to completely erase them from his legacy. The story of Jerry Lewis and his family is one of the most tragic in Hollywood history. Here was a man who brought joy and laughter to millions of people around the world, but who couldn't find peace within his own home. His rise from poverty to become one of the most successful entertainers of all time should have been a beautiful story. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about how fame, money, and power can corrupt even the most gifted people. Jerry's sons never got the father they deserved, and Jerry never got the family relationships he might have wanted deep down. His cruel will wasn't just about money. It was about a man who felt so much pain and anger that he wanted to hurt the people who should have mattered most to him, even after he was gone. The fact that none of his sons fought the will might be the saddest part of all. It shows just how completely Jerry had broken their spirits over the years. Susan Minaret's story is perhaps the most heartbreaking of all. She had scientific proof that Jerry Lewis was her father, but she was too poor to claim what should have been rightfully hers. In a system where justice often goes to whoever can afford the best lawyers, Susan was left with nothing but the knowledge of who her father really was. Today, Jerry Lewis is remembered primarily for his comedy and his decades of charity work, raising money for muscular dystrophy research. But those who look deeper into his story find a much more complicated legacy. Behind the laughter and the humanitarian awards was a man who caused tremendous pain to the people who loved him most. The Lewis family tragedy reminds us that fame and success don't automatically make someone a good person. Jerry Lewis made the world laugh, but he couldn't make his own family happy. His secret will revealed the true darkness that lived inside one of America's most beloved entertainers. And in the end, that darkness won. What do you think about Jerry? Lewis and his shocking will. Should his sons have fought harder for their inheritance? Was Jerry justified in his anger, or was his final act simply cruel revenge against his own children? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as shocking as I did, please hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss another incredible true story like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.